get elected? Did he run for mayor?
Yeah.
Did he get
Was he before, or is that's a new role for him? And so who's the new commissioner then?
Is that gonna be open here in the next couple days? So that means no.
A new golf course, or there's just reopening?
Someone asked me the other day, they're like, so like last summer, I was like, try a couple summers, like at least. Yeah, what's left to do? Got good groundskeepers.
number?
Yeah, I'm just sending him a message.
He's in town.
Drive, and then we hit the ground, keep going, bounce and bounce. I was like, oh man, I can do that.
You're a golfer?
Some, well, I don't know if I go that far, but I own clubs and I
Yeah.
whack balls.
John said he's going to,
stuff, right?
so he should be logging on. John is logging on, but just hasn't yet.
What's out there, Amanda, looks beautiful.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It really
I
is.
haven't driven down 10 in a while.
Well, 10 is not the great representative because that's hole 3 there and that's,
Yeah.
and there's a couple of spots there and of course that green has been behind, but there's some great, I mean, everything else just looks so nice. It's gonna be great. Get
Yeah,
open.
I'll take a look. I don't have a whole lot of reason to go to the beach, but
Well, golf course is one, right?
yeah, I mean, that was really the only reason I usually ever.
Yep.
Okay, it's 3 o'clock. We'll call the County Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It's June 27th, 2024. And we have Commissioner Sobeluk and Commissioner Claris present here. And who do we have on the phone?
John Orban.
Okay, and Sue Larson, are you on?
Yes.
Okay, so that we do have a quorum, so we'll go ahead. Then the first on the agenda is the minutes from January 30th, 2024. Is there any corrections to those? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the minutes from the May meeting.
Okay, motion to approve the May 30th minutes. Do I have a second?
Second?
Have a second? All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Those opposed? Motion carried. Next thing, we have a public hearing for ZTA 01-24, a proposed amendments to Article 2, Rules and Definitions, Article 3, General Provisions, and Article 5, Zoning District Regulations, the Stark County zoning ordinance adopted October 2nd, 2012, regarding the floodplain management and floodplain overlay district. We'll open the public hearing on that, and Mr. Joseph. Okay,
We got someone, just a second. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Steve Josephson, County Planner. This is an amendment to the flood, to two portions of the zoning ordinance. One is the floodplain management one, which was added in 2022, and the other one is a floodplain overlay district, which was part of the original zoning district. Back in 2022, when the FEMA maps for the western part of the county were amended, both FEMA and the State Water Commission looked at our zoning ordinance and said, well, you don't really have all the floodplain management provisions in here that you're supposed to as a participating community. So they gave us model ordinance. We worked with them and got this approved in 2022. Because there are new FEMA maps being adopted for the western part of the county eastern part of the county that become effective on August 28th, 2024, we supposedly at a minimum had to change that date. Well, we sent it off to both the state and FEMA and found out that there had been a variety of changes that had been made to the model ordinance that were required by FEMA. So that's a lot of what you're seeing, the additions, whether it's definitions or additional language that's been refined or things that are now being required by both FEMA and the State Water Commission. The other thing is also amendment to the floodplain management, the floodplain overlay district. At the time that the zoning ordinance was adopted, that took the place of a floodplain management regulations. And what staff is proposing to do is remove a lot of the stuff that duplicates what's in the floodplain management ordinance. And one other thing was in terms of permitted uses, was to add single-family residences to that. That wasn't in the original ordinance. Didn't see a reason why you couldn't put single-family residential use, allow them in the floodplain. The floodplain overlay district only applies in those areas that FEMA has designated as the A zone or special flood hazard area. And then they also referenced conditional uses for certain structures and proposing to eliminate those things that aren't really structures. I think they talked about fences, they talked about parking lots, and so that's cleanup. So if this is approved, this will get, the effective date will jive with the new maps. It'll jive with the new language, that from the model ordinance. And it'll eliminate language from that overlay district that either duplicates or conflicts with the floodplain management section. So that's it, commissioners, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Josephson? If not, then I'm gonna open up the public hearing. Is anybody from the public have any comment on the floodplain management, floodplain overlay district? Anyone for the public have any comment? Anyone for the public have any comments on the public hearing? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing then. If there's no questions for Mr. Josephson, I look for a motion then.
I'd move to approve the floodplain provisions, zoning regulations.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any other discussion? Not, roll call vote, then Commissioner Sobelik.
Aye.
Commissioner Claris.
Aye.
Commissioner Larson.
Aye.
Commissioner Orderman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carried. Next item on the agenda is the public hearing then for CP 01-24, proposed update to the 2010 Stark County Comprehensive Plan.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Franchuk, Commissioner Steve Josephson, County Planner. This is the update to the 2010 Comprehensive Plan. As you all are aware, the county hired SRF Consulting as, to lead the project. A number of you have worked on the revisions as part of the technical advisory committee. You're also aware that there were inputs for, there were opportunities for public input, during this process. Staff recommends approval of the revisions to the 2010 plan, which is essentially, it will replace the old 2010 plan with this 2040 comprehensive plan. Rather than print up the entire thing, I provided the link for everyone to look at, but I have attached all the goals, objectives, and policies that'll be used for the Planning and Zoning Commission to make recommendations on growth, and then for the County Commission to use when making those decisions. And as I said, Dave Sweeney is here. He can probably talk. There've been some minor changes, but it doesn't really change anything in terms of those policies or anything that you've seen all along. So I would ask Mr. Sweeney to address those and be available to answer any questions.
Sure, thank you, Steve. I did bring a presentation. It's probably pretty similar to the one that Scott gave last time. I don't know if you want me to share that. If I can, do I need to be in the meeting? No? Okay. But you'll be able to pull it up there. Perfect. All right, so, yep, Steve, as you mentioned, this is a replacement to the previous comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2010. We're calling this the 2040 comprehensive plan, thinking out 10 to 15 years. So it is a long-term planning document. Let's see, I'll use the mouse here. Sorry, as I get acclimated. There we go. So just just a summary of the project. It's a long-range plan to guide county growth and development. It was funding through the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program through the BRIC grant. So there are some pieces in here that are really emphasizing resilience. There's an element on emergency management. There's an element on public infrastructure and facilities, and a lot of that kind of ties back to emergency management of your systems, right? So that's something that we wanted to highlight because there was that funding piece there. The study area includes all of Stark County, but the land use plan is primarily focused on areas within Stark County's jurisdiction. This is just a snippet on the right from the current plan, from the land use element. So the current plan it might just be like 20 pages or so. Pretty bare bones, does have goals and policies, but I think with this update, we're really fleshing that out. We're broadening the scope. We created the future land use map. There's a lot of other maps and guidance in the plan, I think. So it's really an improvement on the current plan. So there were 10 elements that were scoped for this project. They're all up here. Land use and transportation are probably the two biggest ones. Those are going to be the two meatiest chapters, but there's a lot of other elements that are related to that. As I mentioned, emergency management, public infrastructure and facilities, economic development relates to land use planning and transportation planning, obviously, housing. All of these things are tied together. Project timeline, I think most of you are aware, a lot of you have been involved throughout the process, but this has been about a 1-year project now that we're wrapping up. Steve mentioned the public engagement activities for this, so we did have a series of workshops last fall. In September, we did one in South Hart, one in Dickinson, and one in Taylor. We did a community survey for this plan as well. And of course, we had the public open house just last month here in Dickinson. A couple changes that, Steve, that you mentioned that came out from the previous draft that we presented at the open house. They're pretty minor. One is we got a comment from the Dickinson Parks and Recreation Director on another trail opportunity he wanted to highlight, and that was a trail adjacent to ND Highway 22 south from Dickinson that would connect to the county fairgrounds. So we put that in the Parks and Rec element of the plan. Another minor tweak is we listed a series of implementation actions at the end of the plan, and we had the steering committee, or the TAC, I should say, help us prioritize those. One thing that came to mind after we did that exercise was Gladstone's ETA, or extraterritorial area, that has not been legally formalized. There's not an agreement. It doesn't exist on a map as far as we're aware, even though Gladstone thought that it had. So I think that's a pretty easy action step, but we would want to get an agreement there between the county and the city and formalize that. So we added that to the list, but that wasn't something that the TAC had seen previously. And then the final minor change was we were previously referring to a future land use category as rural residential, but you have a rural residential zoning district, so just to avoid confusion, we changed it, we just flipped it, so it's now residential rural. So if you're talking about residential rural, that's the future land use category. If you're talking about rural residential, that's the zoning district. And they would be complementary, but we didn't want to create confusion there. So those were really the main changes from the draft plan. So in addition to the comprehensive plan document, there's a county profile that's been provided. That's Appendix A. There's the survey summary. We'll be providing all of the GIS files to the county when we're done with this here. Obviously, we'll be wrapping up pretty shortly, so I'll be sending those over to Steve, and then you'll have everything in digital format. So the plan framework for each element, there's a vision statement. We have goals, policies, actions, that's the implementation actions that I talked about, and metrics. I'm just gonna run through this really quick, kind of hitting on what the difference is between all of these things. But the vision statement is gonna be a high-level guiding statement. So for transportation, the example is our community has a safe, reliable transportation system that connects residents and visitors to the places where they live, work, and play. Pretty high level, but want to get some keywords in there, right? Safe, reliable, connected. Goals, you're building on that. You're providing a little bit more direction here. So one of the transportation goals related is manage the roadway system equitably and cost effectively. So we want to use objective criteria to prioritize transportation system improvements. So thinking about things like road surface condition or travel volumes or crashes, things like that, right? Or not just, we're gonna invest in this road because we feel like it, or we heard from one person that we need to fix that. Clearly defining road maintenance responsibilities, right? So we're providing more direction through the goals. And then the policies, I think, is getting down to what Stark County does. So these are more action-oriented. They're intended to provide clear direction for decision making. So we're saying explicitly for transportation, did I lose my?
No, it's up on the other screen.
Oh, it's over there. Okay. That Stark County prioritizes the regular maintenance of county major collectors and minor arterial roadways. So here we're saying, kind of getting back to those different criteria or things that we're thinking about. Obviously, we need to make sure that we're investing in our most important roadways. When development impacts the condition of county roads or bridges, Stark County requires the developer to restore infrastructure to its pre-development condition or better. So using these words like prioritize or require, et cetera, we're getting more policy-based here. But again, in order to be, legally, to have the legal way behind it, these need to be adopted into ordinance. And some of the stuff is already there. It's just providing support for what you currently do. Then when we get to the implementation piece of this, we looked at all of the different elements individually and identified a series of short, mid, and long-term action steps for each. So the time frame for those is 1 to 2 years. Those are the short term, 3 to 5 for midterm, 5 to 10 for long term. We also identified the lead department and stakeholders for carrying out each of the action steps, and then the cost or level of effort. So the way we define this is if it's a high cost, that means it's a capital investment in a physical project, likely. So like a highway rehabilitation, right? And it may include significant county labor. Moderate is maybe not necessarily capital investment, but still requiring significant effort from the county. And then low is going to be everything else. It might just be changing existing practices or approaches to collaboration, for example. And then we rank them and prioritize them based on feedback from the Technical Advisory Committee. So just some examples here. For example, one action item, inventory the condition of paved county roads and major collectors, and add the condition information to GIS database and use that to identify and prioritize long-term facility needs, right? So getting back to, we want to have objective criteria that we're using to make these decisions. Completing reconstruction or major rehabilitation project for the Enchanted Highway and Highway 10, and then all of the specific things that would be required there, looking at different alternatives, obviously the engineering, environmental, funding, procurement, all of that. We put that as an action item. That's a big one, obviously, and it's a long-term one, but we want to put it in the plan. It's not too early, I think, to start thinking about that type of thing, because it definitely takes a lot of planning. For each of the elements as well, we provided a series of metrics. So if you want to look back in a few years and kind of see how you're doing, you can track that. Some of them, you know, you might not have as much control over, but I think some of them you would. So for example, if it's number of grants applied to or grant funding dollars awarded, that's something that I think, you know, you certainly would have some control over and can go back and see how you were doing from year to year. Other examples here, number of crashes, rate, number of improvements completed. Obviously, you have control over that, payment condition, et cetera. The future land use map and the future land use categories is a really key part of this plan. That's not something that the current plan had, so this is new. And so the intent of this is to provide support for zoning. And I know Scott was here last month, and I think probably talked about this and how to implement the future land use map. You know, how to apply that when you're considering zoning changes, how to amend it as necessary. So I won't go into too much detail there, but all of the future land use categories are listed here. Open space, that aligns with the floodplain overlay. Public land, those are going to be the state-owned tracts. Recreational, general agricultural, prime agricultural. So that's a key thing, and I think that will be something that's pretty helpful going forward, is we use the soils data that was available to kind of differentiate between areas that are actively farmed, areas where we see, you know, actual cropping and the soil is higher quality. That's why they're being farmed, as opposed to other agricultural areas that are zoned agricultural but maybe aren't actively farmed or don't have the same level of soil quality. So differentiating that when you get development applications, to be able to say, well, you know, this is probably okay because we're not taking prime farmland out of production, and we have a map, you know, to back that up. Or, you know, this would be taking prime farmland out of production, and that's something that's important to us. It's a goal in the plan, so maybe we need to evaluate this a little bit more carefully. Residential rural, as I mentioned, we just flipped the name there. A few other categories as well. So these all align. I guess I'll go forward a couple. These all align more or less with your existing zoning districts. So here's a table kind of showing that relationship, but I think we did introduce a couple categories that maybe don't quite fit within existing zoning district. Community mixed use. I know there was a desire to provide more flexible policies to potentially enable development in some of the smaller unincorporated communities like Leffer. So there might need to be some modified zoning policies and maybe a new district that's applied there. Light industrial, the industrial agricultural category, there might need to be a new district that applies there. But as you can see, those also probably could be linked to some existing districts as well. I'll go back to the future land use map. Kind of hard to see at this scale, but just want to point out that I think most of the development we're showing is the areas that where we want to be guiding development is pretty logical. Most of it is surrounding the Dickinson area or is along 94, right? So we want to be strategic about how we're growing and making sure that, you know, everything makes sense, that these growth areas make sense, that they have the infrastructure that they need to develop as intended. So I think we've done a good job doing that. The areas in the lighter gray are general agricultural, and the areas in the darker gray are the prime agricultural areas that I was talking about. I'll skip this. I think I already touched on plan implementation. So that's it for me. That's a summary of the project in a nutshell. But obviously, I think to implement the plan, I'd encourage everybody to read through it if you haven't already and get familiar with it. And hopefully, it's something that you can use on a regular basis as you're reviewing planning applications and zoning amendments and things like that. And just want to wrap up by saying this has been a really fun project for me personally. It's been great working with the county and great working with Steve. So I was really happy with the process. I think we got a good result. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Sweeney? Okay. Well, thank you and Scott for your work on this project, and also to the advisory committee that worked with you too, then Steve on this. So, thank you. Okay. If there's no other questions, then I'll look for a motion to move this forward to the commission meeting. Oh, I guess that we need a public hearing, yeah. Anybody from the public have any comment on the comprehensive plan, Stark County Comprehensive Plan? Anybody from the public have any comment on the comprehensive plan? Anyone from the public have any comment? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing then, and I'll look for a motion. And
If I may, Chairman Franchuk, Commissioners, just wanted to make sure, and I'll ask the state's attorney about this. So would the motion be to adopt the 2040 plan and replace the current 2010 plan?
As opposed to.
Well, just to make sure that, just to make sure that that's the actual action.
If that's what you're looking at doing, yeah.
Okay.
okay,
With that said, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to adopt the 2040 comprehensive plan to replace the 2010 Stark County Comprehensive Plan.
okay. I have a motion to have a second.
Second?
I have a second. Any other discussion? Not a roll call vote. Commissioner Clares,
Aye.
Commissioner Sobeluk,
Aye.
Commissioner Oderman, Commissioner Larson, Commissioner Larson.
Aye.
Okay. And the chair votes aye, and motion carried. And both of these items that we had public hearing for will go before the county commission on July 2nd, Tuesday next week. Anything else with the agenda?
I think everyone wants to get.
Okay. If not, then I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Thank you.
I got to go back to Fargo.